Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden, my happy place to talk about scary things. In today's installment we have the Tickle V Giggle verdict. This is very upsetting for at least a couple of reasons. And so I went out and I found some stuff for us, and I've tried to splice together the narrative to try and give us all some perspective on exactly what does this mean for Australia and for the rest of us.
The federal court has ruled the exclusion of a transgender woman from a female-only app constituted unlawful discrimination.
Basically, the judgment is that, women have to be forced to have men in female-only spaces. Thereby, female-only spaces no longer exist in this country.
This is not how a secular liberal society is supposed to function. Gender ideology is inherently authoritarian.
In 2021, Roxanne Tickle joined the social network Giggle for Girls, designed as an online refuge for women.
You're being told that if you see a man, and that is a man, but that man claims to be a woman, you have to accept that as a woman.
Her identity was initially verified by the app.
A man can just come into a woman's change room and locker room, wherever, and so long as he says he's a woman, there's absolutely nothing that we can do.
But was later restricted by a manual override.
Justice Richard Bromwich found a claim of direct discrimination had failed because it could not be established that his removal from the app was because Tickle was transgender. However, the judge found in favour of Tickle on the basis of indirect discrimination.
Giggle's CEO, Sall Grover, denied discriminatory conduct.
The judge found there had been indirect gender identity discrimination against Roxanne Tickle because she was excluded from using the app after Giggle staff, in their view, determined she did not look sufficiently female.
There is still discrimination. In a sense, if you're going to have any category that's catering to a specific group, discrimination is actually completely necessary.
But we're talking at cross purposes here because that word has come to have two different uses with two countervailing definitions.
There's this big emphasis on the identity of trans women.
Hey look, it's Daisy Cousins. I guess now we know why we haven't seen her around YouTubeville for a while, because somebody gave her a TV show. Congrats, I guess.
But it's like women, as in women, adult human females, simply aren't afforded the same weight to their gender identity. Do you think that's a good point?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't use the phrase gender identity because I don't think it exists in any real, meaningful way.
That is a good point. If you're arguing using the definition of gender identity that is popular in discourse these days, yeah, cis women's gender identity is simply not afforded the kind of respect and deference that trans women's gender identity is. That's a logical point if you follow that frame. But so, why is it that you're not willing to follow along with that framing, but you're allowing the whole discrimination thing? This term does not exist in any real meaningful way anymore either. It was coined in this context as a collective polite term for racism and sexism, and use of this meaning has snowballed to encompass more neutral distinctions. A woman particular about her associations might be called discriminating, as in of good taste. The meaning of this word has become at least as twisted and tormented as the word gender. Because yeah, he was discriminated against because he was a male in a female space. Make them prove that that's a bad thing. Take the opportunity to remind everyone just why it is that women have learned to be discriminating in the first place.
Bromwich said the defendant, Sall Grover, and her company Giggle for Girls considered sex to mean the sex of a person at birth, which the defendant said was unchangeable.
However, Justice Robert Bromwich today found indirect gender identity discrimination had occurred.
The judge said these arguments failed because a long history of cases decided by courts going back over 30 years had established that, in its ordinary meaning, sex is changeable.
Whatever that means.
I brought my case to show trans people that you can be brave and that you can stand up for yourself.
This was a judgment that was unfortunately expected, as you said, due to the nature of the muddled Sex Discrimination Act that we're dealing with.
I'm pleased by the outcome of my case, and I hope it is healing for trans and gender diverse people. The ruling shows that all women are protected from discrimination.
That's the thing about Australia's Sex Discrimination Act. Julia Gillard changed it in 2013, didn't she, to basically be not about biological sex and more about gender identity.
I think that this judgment sends the message that we want an inclusive society in which all can participate.
So she's been made an example of. Thanks for confirming that for us.
And that includes trans people as well as people who have a range of sexual orientations.
And slipping in the force teaming with the gay community there, who's probably next on their list.
So the Sex Discrimination Act in Australia was brought in 1984, and it's because we became a signatory with CEDAW, which is the UN's Convention of the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is essentially like an international Bill of Rights for women.
It's now been highlighted, and it's now for sure that the women who have been speaking out about this issue are not crying wolf, we're not being hysterical.
The judge declined to order an apology as requested.
Once we signed it, we enlivened it in law with the Sex Discrimination Act. And it was, obviously an act for women, for females, and that wasn't very controversial at the time.
Everything we've been warning people about the fact that you were forced to see men as women, that men are being claiming to be women and being accepted legally that way, and they are taking away women's rights, that has been confirmed. It is happening. Yep. No one can deny that anymore.
Saying it would be devoid of sincerity.
Cut to 2013, that under the Julia Gillard's government, they did amendments that took out the definition of man and woman from the Act and added in gender identity.
So, in a sense, now that we have that confirmation, now we can go about fixing it.
Sall Grover says she is considering an appeal.
Then you've got activists that have sort of captured institutions like the Australian Human Rights Commission to basically just argue that gender identity has more weight than biological sex in the Sex Discrimination Act.
Women's rights are the canary in the coal mine of this issue. However, this issue of gender ideology sweeping through our society affects literally everyone.
Well, Julia Gillard has dined out for 10 years now on being Australia's first female Prime Minister, obviously very clear of what a woman is at the time and the significance of being a woman leader of a country.
Because it attacks freedom of belief, freedom of speech, and freedom of association.
For now, the app remains offline.
So it's happened to women first, but it's coming to everyone. Literally, the judge has said that sex is changeable. This takes away all male spaces as well.
And while she was giving, her sort of famous misogyny speech, and you're saying that she would not be lectured on what misogyny is by a man, in the background was taking out any legal protections for women and girls.
Women have been speaking up about this for such a long time. We've been called hysterical, we've become bigots, we've been called Nazis, everything. We are not crying wolf.
And now, officially as of today, in Australia, women do not exist as a sex class at all.
It's like, if you don't want this to get worse, join the fight. Let's start pushing back and fixing it.
We are just a thought. Any man can claim to be a woman. We don't kind of exist in law, essentially, as a unique category of human beings, despite in reality being a separate category of human beings from men.
People who call themselves trans, they are, of course, entitled to rights. Now, what they don't seem to realise is most of their rights actually do come under the banner of sex-based rights, because whether they like it or not, they also have a biological sex.
What this judgment has exposed, really, is that the law itself is just, well, as the saying goes, the law is an ass.
But if they wanted some rights specific to themselves, okay, fine. Find a way to do that without taking rights away from everyone else, and there will be no problem. The only reason that there is a conflict at the moment is because they are taking rights away from other people.
Laws are being changed in stealth. Like, there's been no votes on this or anything. None of us have really known about it. But they, changed the law in a way that doesn't reflect reality. I think that that's the biggest issue for me.
What I hate is as a woman being told, and by judges, that women must, and you've just said it, accept and admit that there is no difference now. There's no difference.
So I've always said that my intention is to see it the whole way through, and that remains. So the whole way through would be seeing it all the way to the High Court. So just at the moment, my legal team is going to look at the judgment, and we will make decisions based on that.
Because it is really explicitly telling you don't actually have any rights to say no to these men.
When you've got laws reflecting reality, and how society actually functions, then laws should actually work pretty well. But there is clearly a conflict here.
Every single man who wants to bypass women's boundaries is behaving like a predator.
My intention has always been to take it to the High Court. I'm not going to give up a fight sort of halfway through it. And women don't have our rights back yet, so we have to get them back.
Just normal people we're all out there living our lives. We're not, you don't have to be like J.K. Rowling to be an important voice in this. This issue will actually be won by all ordinary, normal, everyday people speaking out and standing up and going, no, we do not want this to be happening in our society.
So Sall Grover is a hero, and if I weren't already doing this, I'd probably be starting a channel right now. Thank you, Sall, for everything that you're doing for women's rights, because this precedent is terrifying. This precedent is very, very bad for women all over the world. You can't change your sex, and declaring something in law does not make it true. Thank you so much for joining me out here in the garden today. I have been Rad Mom. Come back at the top of the hour for the live stream, where I'm sure we will keep it very lively talking about international law. And next Wednesday at 11 for a brand new video. All right, thanks. I'll see you then. Bye.